Father, guide my heart, guide my mind, guide my tongue. What's up? Okay. I've been needing to create content, needed to create a new YouTube video, needed to explain how I ended up in jail a couple weeks back. And it's been building in my head how to do it, where to do it, capture the right background, be in the right mood, be in the right energy, have all my thoughts collected properly. But that wouldn't be on brand. I keep saying how I want things unedited, unfiltered, uncut, raw, and real. So here it is. I don't know the direction this video is going to take right now. What I had wanted to do, what I had planned to do, was share with everybody what I am, who I am, where I am. And so I guess that's because as far as me being a life coach, I've been struggling trying to figure out how do I convince people I know as much as I say I do. How do I convince them I'm as educated as I say I am? How do I get them to take me seriously? How do I get my friends to believe in me? I've had, there's some letters over here I want to grab. I received a whole bunch of letters this week. Whole lot of outpouring this week of support. And I want to share some of those things with you. I want to tell you who I am and what gives me the audacity to say I am a life coach and I have answers and I am an expert. I am a professional. I know I joke a lot. I come off real casual. My appearance, my demeanor lends to a less than serious or professional or expert tone. I know this. Part of what I teach people is you need to be your genuine self. You don't put on to convince others of who you are and what you are. And while I thought maybe it would be good for my brand and my business if I was in polo shirts or button-up shirts and a tie, I carried myself a certain way. I spoke eloquently. But I want to be real. Truth is, I am educated, I am knowledgeable, I do have wisdom, I have experienced a lot. And that's not my arrogance or my pride talking. It all comes with receipts. So let me start sharing about my life. It starts with Jesus. I had a firm grasp of who Jesus was introduced to me when I was very small. I am the byproduct of a saint and a gangster. My mother has been studying the scriptures since she was 12. My pops was raised in a boys' home. And from there went to street life. He was a user, he was a dealer, he was an addict, he was an alcoholic, he was homeless, he was eating out of trash cans. He's got as many stab wounds as he does tattoos. In and out of jail. Short stretches, longer stretches. But they're both believers. My pops was saved from his drug and alcohol addictions when I was 2 years old. My mother had left him when I was a baby, took me, and we left and didn't tell him where we were going. I said we like I had something to say in the conversation. We left and she told him that she was not going to subject her son to that life if he wasn't going to get clean. And so he cried out to God. He had actually was on his way to commit suicide. He was on the edge of a bridge in his car, ready to drive his car off the bridge and end it, crying in his beer, because alcoholism, it is a disease. And despite his best efforts, he couldn't beat it on his own. And so while he was on that bridge, crying, just trying to build up the courage to make the jump, I heard God tell him, go to this church. It's late at night. God told him, go to this church. And so he decides he's gonna, he argues with God and says, like, why? What's the point? What's the point? I've tried. I've gone to you. I've prayed to you. I've cried to you. I've given everything I can. Nothing has worked. I'm tired. I give up. I'm done. And God said, just go to this church. And so, in one last desperate act, my dad went. And sure enough, the church was open and there was a service being held. And he sat in the back. And when the service was over, the pastor came and sought him out. And he told my dad that he hadn't been able to take his eyes off him the whole service. He said that the entire time he was speaking, he saw this glow around my dad. There was just this light emanating from him the whole time. He said he couldn't take his eyes off him. There was this glow around him. And he prayed with my dad. And my dad has been clean and sober for 35 years now. He still had his generational trauma and his childhood demons and the result of a childhood without parents present or alive. And he had a lot of pain and traumas. And so while his addiction was gone, he still had all that pain to deal with. But he had faith in God, as did my mother. And they taught me that our Creator seeks a relationship, not a religion. God does not support or build religion. Flawed mankind did that. The Creator gave us His Word as a way to seek out a relationship with Him. And so my parents raised me knowing that and studying that. And I asked the Holy Spirit to live within me. And I asked Jesus to be my Savior when I was between 5 and 6 years old. And at that time, Matthew was my favorite book of the Bible because that was the only one that had a name that made sense to me at the time. And I had a 4th grade reading level in the 2nd grade, so I could comprehend, I could read, I could understand. And so I had an understanding of the gospel and who Jesus was when I made that choice and I made that decision. And I asked the Holy Spirit to live in me and guide me. And because I was so young, I didn't recognize for a lot of years that I was receiving that guidance and that He was speaking to me. I arrogantly thought it was my own reasoning, my own critical thinking skills, my own logic, my own education, my own parenting and background that had blessed me. I realize now that it wasn't. I remember when we moved back to the reservation when I was 8 years old. My pops saying, things are going to get harder. Things are going to be dangerous. And I thought, more dangerous than the city? More dangerous than where we live in now? I've witnessed stepbrothers taking turns beating their dad with an aluminum bat. I had to go to court and testify for that when I was 5. Or 7, somewhere in there. Anyway, sure enough, he was right. We got to the reservation. I had my first fist fight outside of church at 8 years old, and I got my ass kicked. It wasn't more than a couple months later, out on the sidewalk outside of the rundown house that we were renting, that I had my first gun pointed at me. Some older teens driving by stuck the gun out the window at me as I'm standing there on the corner on my bicycle, and they just pointed it at me and stared at me as they went by. And after they went by, I ran inside and told my dad. And it went a little something like this. I had my first gun pulled when I was only 8. I let my papa know when he grabbed his .38. We tracked them boys down and he commenced to set them straight. And even though he quick to bust, he handled them both fisticuffs. He hit them with the pistol butt and let them know no bitch in us. We ghetto gospel gangsters, we warriors, we indigenous. I know. Some folks are gonna say, oh, Sav, you're not supposed to cuss, you're not supposed to swear, you're not supposed to use that kind of language. I thought you just said you have Jesus in your heart, right? You're one of them Christians, right? Yeah, you're right, I am. I think the language can be silly at times, the things we get caught up in. My God seeks a relationship with me, and I seek a relationship with my God, and it doesn't get caught up on silly things like which words I use. Now, while my path is not your path, I am at peace with who my God has made me and who I am in my God, and I know He is proud of me. I know I am serving His will because He talks to me and He talks through me. So when I was maybe 9 years old, maybe 10 years old, right in there, God spoke to me. He spoke to me about the fact that I had two parents where most of my friends barely had one. And if they had one or both, they didn't have sober parents, they didn't have clean parents. And I had both parents, and while they were flawed, they had a relationship with God, and they were clean and sober. And God told me that I had a blessing not to be squandered or taken lightly, not to be taken for granted. He also told me I had a responsibility with that gift. And so from that young age, I took up my cross. I took heed to what he said. I had a responsibility. Being Native American, being a person of color, even though I'm a white passing person of color, something we're raised with is knowing that we have to live above. We have to go the extra mile. We have to be extra polite, extra courteous, extra educated. We have to go above and beyond to prove ourselves in this world, because we are going to be discriminated against and looked down on and judged. And so I knew I had a responsibility, not just to my neighborhood, but to my native people, to my community, to my reservation, to all reservations. And so I took that up, I took that with seriousness. I've been working since I was 10 years old. Got my first job picking up trash outside of a mechanic shop. Shortly after that, I got a job out of a catalog called the Olympia Sales Club for Kids. The idea was that you were supposed to take this catalog around to your parents and their friends, and they would buy stuff out of it, and you'd get points towards prizes, or you could get a small commission. But not me. No. I went out of the hood and went up into the neighborhood that had money, and I went door to door from the ages of 11 to 14. I would go door to door in the nice neighborhood with this catalog, and I would say, "Hi, I'm with the Olympia Sales Club for Kids, and I was wondering if you had a moment to take a look at our catalog today." I would take down their order numbers, their phone numbers, their address, if they paid in cash or check. I would fill it all out of my notebook. I would take it home, I would process it, I would fill it all out on a checklist with the company, put all the checks and cash in an envelope along with the order numbers, and I would send it off. And I wasn't interested in the prize catalog. I needed money. And for every item I sold, I could earn a $2 commission. And so I did. And so at 11 years old, I was getting checks in the mail with my name printed on them. Not for a lot of money, maybe $40 here, $30 there, $75 there. But I was 11 years old with legitimate checks with my name printed on them. And that put a battery in my back to keep going. When I was 14, I was watching a show on the History Channel about the military, and my pops walked in the room and he said, "You might want to give that some serious thought. I don't see another way out of here for you. College is going to be too expensive, but you do got to get out of here." The day I turned 15, my pops took me to McDonald's because that was the legal working age, and I filled out my application, and I ended up working at McDonald's the rest of the way through high school, while still competing in sports, while still maintaining my grade point average, while still raising my younger siblings while both my parents worked. I've been washing the family's dishes since I was about 9 years old. I was also responsible for sweeping the kitchen, vacuuming the rugs, taking out the trash, and caring for my younger sister, who was 2 years younger than me, and then my baby brothers. I've been changing diapers since I was 10 years old. I've been cooking meals for my siblings since I was 10 years old. I've been reading them their bedtime stories and tucking them in at night, getting them dressed, getting them cleaned up, doing arts and crafts projects with them, teaching them life lessons since I was 10 years old. I remember when I was 14, I was a freshman in high school, and I was friends with the girl next door. She came to me. The spot next door was the dope house. So was the spot across the street. And so my friend came to me one day in tears, crying because her pops was doing a deal and an 8-ball was missing. And in front of a customer, her pops made her strip to prove that she didn't have this 8-ball on her. To that friend, I'm praying for you today. And so I counseled her through that with the guidance God gave me. I had another friend shortly after who I counseled through a pregnancy scare. I was also tutoring another friend in math. I was a member of the National Honor Society in high school. Public high school came easy to me as far as the work went. See, I was homeschooled up through the 8th grade. And I was basically self-taught because both my parents worked full-time and worked multiple jobs. My mother would say, here's your books, your math, your science, your English, your history. You read a chapter in each, you do the work at the end. If you don't understand it, read the chapter again until you do. So I was taught reasoning and logic and critical thinking skills from a young age. And I was taught to be self-teaching. I was taught to educate myself rather than just swallowing what was fed to me. I wasn't indoctrinated with how to think or what to think. I was able to figure those things out for myself with God's guidance. As I do this, I gotta make sure my camera's still running. So, on top of babysitting my siblings, I also had my schoolwork. My schoolwork usually only took me from about 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It wasn't difficult to do. You sit down, you read, you do the work at the end. So when I got to public high school, it was frustrating for me that I had to sit around in class for so long, and that I had to take time between periods, and I had to take a break for lunch, and that I had to wait for other people. But regardless, the work wasn't hard for me. School came easy. When I was 16 years old, I was a high school junior. And I was sitting in chemistry class. And my name came over the loudspeaker, and I was called to the front office. So I went to the front office, and they said, "Hey, did you sign up to take the military ASVAB test?" I said, "Oh yeah, I did. When is that?" And they said, "It's right now. They're waiting for you." So I went in and completely unprepared, completely blindsided. I walked in and I took this military ASVAB test at 16. Come to find out later that you're not legally supposed to be able to take the ASVAB at 16. You're supposed to be 17. But because I was a high school junior, they assumed I was at least 17. But I scored in the top 10 percentile on the ASVAB. And so when I went through the delayed entry program for the Air Force, they said, "You can retake the ASVAB if you want, but you scored high enough for just about any job in the military." And they said, "You scored so high, in fact, we would like you to take another special intelligence test." Now, I'm not going to cap and say that I went and did amazing on the special intelligence test. I got about an hour into it, and it started getting weird. The questions started getting really weird. And I was like, too much for this dirty little Indian boy. And so I didn't finish that test. But I did score in the top 10 percentile walking in off the street completely unprepared at only 16. And so the Navy came knocking first. And they said, "Have you heard of the CIA? You know you could get a job with the CIA?" And I was like, "Man, this dude blowing smoke." And so I was immediately turned off to the Navy. Nope, no Navy. I actually had the Air Force and the Army recruiters come to my house at the same time, not knowing the other was coming. And I had them both plead their cases on what their branch had to offer. And when it came down to it, the Air Force had more jets and the Army had more helicopters, and I had dreams of flying, being a pilot, being an airplane pilot. So I went with the Air Force. And I almost didn't get in. See, while I have been wrestling since I was 8 years old, that's also the age when issues with diet and body weight and self-esteem started coming into play. I remember being 8 years old and going to a birthday party down the street. And I had just started wrestling, a month or two prior. I was 8 or 9, right in there. 8 years old, that's right. And I went to this birthday party down the street, and they served the cake and ice cream, and I go and I start to eat, and I take a bite. And about my second bite in, I remember, I have to weigh in for a wrestling tournament in the morning. And so I spit the cake out. I threw it in the trash, and I left the party. I didn't want to sit around all the other kids enjoying cake and ice cream when I couldn't. That's when my issues with dieting and weight and body image began. And I wrestled all the way up through high school. I was never a placer. I was never some star. But I always worked. I always worked hard. I always showed up. 2-a-day practices, having to walk in the snow when it was 10 below and pitch black out to get to wrestling practice. I showed up. I did the work. It was hard. It was painful. I hated it. I used to remember dreading looking at the clock, knowing there's an hour till practice starts. There's 45 minutes till practice starts. There's 30 minutes till practice starts. There's 15 minutes till practice starts. And practice always started out with 25 minutes of running the halls. And I hated running. Especially running and looking at the same thing over and over and over. And for wrestlers, especially wrestlers with weight to cut, you're not out there in a light little t-shirt and some shorts. You're in some sweatpants. You've got a hoodie on with the hood up. You're trying to sweat out and burn as much weight as possible. That was the old, that's how it was done then. And still how a lot of people do it. And so at 4'11", as a 14-year-old freshman, I came into my wrestling season at 125 pounds. And I cut 20 pounds that first year as a 14-year-old kid to wrestle at 105 pounds. During lunch hour, I would go sit in the library. That way I would be away from the smell and temptations of food. And I went back years later and I saw the librarians at my school, and they saw me and remembered me. They said, "Oh, we remember you coming into the library during lunch. You'd be so pale and your cheeks sunken in and you're just looking sickly and sad because you couldn't eat and you were cutting weight." I remember years later a promoter asking me if I was on weight for a fight, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm used to cutting weight. I wrestled all the way up through high school." And he said, "Oh, so you're comfortable being uncomfortable?" I'm like, yeah, I guess I am. And I've never forgotten that. I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. I've made friends with being uncomfortable. I've sought out being uncomfortable because I believe growth is never comfortable. So I signed up for the Air Force, went through the delayed entry program. So I signed up and enlisted at 16 years old with a contract that I wouldn't leave until I turned 18. I could have left directly after graduating high school. I was still 17, but I said, "Hey, let me enjoy my 18th birthday before I sell my soul over to y'all." So I left 2 weeks after I turned 18 on September 1st. I left for basic training September 1st of 2003. This was still at the height of the Iraq War. It's part of why I enlisted. And so when the opportunity came at 19 years old, they came into my shop unit and they said, "We need bodies for Iraq. We need bodies to go and do force protection. It's outside of your MOS or AFSC. It's outside of your job, basically. We're going to ask you to go to war outside of the job that you have for the military." And I threw my hand up. I was 19. I was the only person from my unit to volunteer. I was the only person from my unit to go. So I wasn't even going over there with brothers in arms that I knew, who I had a camaraderie or a bond with. I was going over there with a bunch of guys I didn't know. And when I got to Iraq, God told me, "Shut up. Shut the hell up. Shut your mouth. Spend this time in silence. Spend this time listening. You don't need to talk. Spend this time listening and observing. Pay attention. There's nothing you need to say right now. There's nothing you've learned in your life that you have to give to the world right now. Shut your mouth. Shut the hell up." And I did. During my tour, I kept my mouth shut and I studied people. I studied their interactions. I studied their reactions. I studied their body language. I studied the stories they told each other. I studied how they spoke to one another. Starting to understand the human condition and experience, and the way some people would boast, some people would lie, some people would demean themselves. I've been studying human behavior and people my whole life. That is something God has shown me to do. Something else from my childhood is with that responsibility he gave me when he told me I had a blessing in parents not to be squandered, is I knew I had to be sober and clean. And so while my friends were doing dirt and out in the streets, I was clean, I was sober. I loved to fight, but that was it. That was my thing. I liked to fight. I didn't even like to fight at first. I grew up a white passing native kid on a dangerous reservation that had the second largest stab rate per capita in the US. I was terrified of fighting my first couple fights, till I realized that you don't die from getting punched in the face. And then I started getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And then I started seeking it out. I had a chip on my shoulder. I had to prove to everybody I wasn't no punk. And once I was starting out, I was fighting the native kids because I was part white, and I was fighting the white kids because they knew I was native. Until the native kids started learning who my family was and what my family name was. And then I was accepted by the natives. And then I was just fighting the white kids to prove how native I was. And I had that chip on my shoulder. I also had a chip on my shoulder because while my pops was clean and sober, he could still be what my mother called a dry drunk and have alcoholic tendencies. See, my pops lost his dad at 10 years old. His dad died. And his mother was an abusive alcoholic with her own generational trauma. Shortly after my dad's dad died, and my dad was maybe 11 years old, he walked in on my grandmother being stabbed by her new boyfriend multiple times. My dad had been bringing her a bottle of Coke to drink that his uncle had given him. He'd gotten 2 bottles of Coke, and he brought one for himself and he had one for his mama. And he walked in on her boyfriend, stabbing her 17 times. And my dad hit that man with that bottle and started beating on him to get away from his mother. He saved her life. My grandmother was in the hospital for 6 months after that. So those are some of my dad's earliest memories. When my grandmother got out of the hospital, she started dating the guy who had stabbed her again while he was in prison. And my grandmother took my pops with her to go visit this man in prison. That is the trauma my dad had from a small child. That's part of it. I'm sure there's parts of it he hasn't told me. So my dad, from there, he went and lived in a group home till he was 18. Him and his older brother, Stormy. Stormy and Windy, the Ackerman boys. And so without his mother and without a dad, he was raised by the system. But it was actually in that boys' home where he met my mother, who was the daughter of the landscaper who took care of the land. They have their own story for another time. So anyway, having 2 clean, sober parents, I had a responsibility to my younger cousins and my nieces and nephews and my younger sister and my baby brothers. And so I never drank. To this day, I have never touched alcohol in my life. I didn't try marijuana till I was 25. I don't mess with any of the hard drugs. I've left them alone. So growing up, I knew that my little cousins and my nephews and nieces, they needed somebody they could go to, that they could count on, that would be clean and sober when their parents weren't or when their grandparents weren't. And I didn't ever want them to lose that hope that at least one person was clean and sober for them. And so I took up that responsibility since I was a kid. So I raised my siblings, I stayed clean and sober, I took care of the house and the chores. I competed in both varsity wrestling and baseball. And I've been working jobs since I was 10 years old. I worked at McDonald's up through high school. And I was the only male that worked the register from the day I started working there at 15. I was the only male who worked the register. They always put the males on the grill. From day one, I was working the register and the drive-thru. And I didn't realize why my male coworkers didn't like me at the time because of it. I didn't realize that they had held a resentment against me because they didn't get to work the register. They were always behind the hot, greasy grill. And at the time, I didn't recognize it. Anyway. So in that time in Iraq, I listened, I studied people. I spent my 20th birthday in Iraq. Lost a close uncle of mine back home while I was there. Heard about it in an email that he died in a motorcycle wreck. It was around those years, 18, 19, 20, when I first got into the military. I had to talk with God, and I said, Lord, I've served you in my church. I've praised you. I've looked to you. I've studied your word. But I'm going to go out in this world and I'm going to try a few things. I'm going to dabble in some things. I'm going to have certain convictions I'm going to hold strong to, but I'm going to experiment with some things. Please have grace and mercy for me. And I'm going to come back and rededicate because I know my life is going to be in service to you, but I'm going to spend some time at least getting to know the world a little. And so I didn't drink, I didn't drug, I was serving in the military, I was taking weekend college classes for accounting, business management. I was still maintaining my sexual virtue. See, I had a belief that with all the marriages ending and the divorce rate being so high, God knew what he was talking about when he said the sex was supposed to be saved for inside a marriage. And I thought I wanted to give my future marriage every possible chance to succeed. And so I had hung on to my virginity until I was 25. No, don't let me cap. I messed around. I played around a bit. You can figure that out. But I had my virginity still till I was 25. I hung on to it. And because I was saving myself and believed in being a one-woman man, I wanted to make sure that I was everything for that one woman and that she was never going to feel like she'd made a mistake or she'd missed out on anything. And so from a young age, I started studying the men on TV to see what it is women admired and wanted in a man. I saw that they wanted a man who was strong, but they also wanted a man who could be caring and supportive and sensitive to listening. A man that wasn't always going to be trying to fix their problems, but sometimes was just going to listen and say, yeah, I know it's hard, I'm here. They wanted a man who could work with his hands, a man who could cook, a man who could clean up after himself, a man who could dance, a man with a sense of humor, a man who was tough and knew how to fight, but a man who was thinking and articulate and educated. So I've worked very hard to try and become all of these things, trying to become the perfect man, so that when I finally did find that one wife and that one woman I settled down with, she wouldn't feel like she missed out on anything. And that's been a very lonely thing, because I thought, being as mature as I was and as educated as I was and as ahead of the game as I was going to marry early. I figured I'd be married by 22, 23, 24 tops. Even have my kids' names picked out. Still do. But that wasn't in the cards. That wasn't in God's plan. So I get home from Iraq, continue to serve in the military, end up volunteering again for a second desert deployment in 2007. Then I get stationed in South Korea for a year when I'm 22. And I live in South Korea for a year. Come back. Only reason I decided to come back to the States is because I was still seeking that wife, and I didn't think I was going to find her overseas. Not for what I was looking for. And so I came back to the States. I got stationed in California. Spent 6 years out there. Didn't find the wife I was looking for. Thought I did. Thought I found the woman I was going to marry. Was so sure of it that this was going to be my wife and the woman who was going to be the mother and educator and fellow disciple to my children. And that's when I went through the toughest, most painful heartache and depression of my life, where I gave my virginity to that woman because I truly believed, and I even said, like, even if it ain't her, I want it to be her, you know? And no sooner did I give it to her than did she turn around and get back with her ex immediately and post it all over social media. I had to find out from social media that the woman I loved more than anything turned her back on me to get back with her ex. And I went into a dark 2-year depression where I pretty much holed up in my apartment. I only came out to go to work, and then I would get off work, and all day I would just think about which fast food restaurant was I gonna go blow money at to soothe my pain. Because I hadn't been a popular kid either. I hadn't been big, hadn't been popular. I was a Christian, it was known. I got in a lot of fights for being mixed, for being poor and having the Fraditas with 4 stripes, for having the Walmart clothes, for not going to all the parties, for not having sex, for not drinking and drugging, for not celebrating Halloween. All these things that made me stand out and made me different did not earn me friends. And I had to be comfortable with that. It was hard, but I knew I was doing the right thing. And so I'm in this dark depression. And feeding old habits as a child where food was my comfort. Little Debbie snacks were my friends. And so when I was going through this dark depression, I gained 50 pounds in a matter of months. And I would just think about which meal I was going to eat in bed next. I could easily go blow $20, $30 at Taco Bell or Wendy's or Del Taco or Jack in the Box or any other place, you name it. I was eating nothing but fast food and eating so much of it that I was getting bored with the restaurants and just spending all day thinking which restaurant I was going to eat at that I wasn't quite sick of yet. And I would come back to my apartment, I would keep the blinds closed and sit in the dark. I would smoke weed, I would eat my junk food, I would cry in the shower, and I'd go to sleep and I'd do it again. And then when I was about 29, 30 years old, I realized I don't have my wife yet. Despite being depressed, my life has been got very comfortable. I'm making more money than anybody my age. I've got a great 2-bedroom apartment. I've got one room that I've converted into a complete gym with mirrors and heavy bags and cardio equipment and weights and a speed bag. I found success as an MMA fighter prior to the depression. I had 2 motorcycles, I had 2 cars. I had no idea when payday was. It didn't matter. I didn't pay attention. I forgot when it was because there was always plenty of money in my account. I'd go party on the weekend. I had a roster of girls to date. But I was not happy. I was not content. I was not satisfied. And so, still in the midst of this depression and this heartache and this heartbreak, I took a job in Abu Dhabi. I gotten out of the military, of course, but I was still working for the military, and I'd applied for this job overseas in Abu Dhabi, and so I went to work in Abu Dhabi as an instructor, training their military how to work on the aircraft that we sold them, working on the F-16 Falcon. And I went out there to try and get over that heartache and kind of convince myself, hey, now there's thousands of miles between us. Now it's really dead. Now it's really over. But the heartache didn't end. But here I am in a beautiful foreign country making 6-figure money. I've got a big fancy H2 Hummer truck with red leather interior and DVD players in the headrests, 650 horsepower. I'm going to yacht parties. I'm going out to dune parties, beach parties. I'm meeting exotic women. I'm buying toys. I've got all sorts of distractions to keep me from sitting with my pain. I'm visiting other countries. I'm traveling to other countries on my weekends. I am a success. By whatever metric you want to measure it by, I had found success. Whether it had been financially, I'd found success. My family was proud of me, my reservation, my community, they were proud of me. I was a role model and a mentor to them. I'd found success there. In my career, I'd succeeded climbing the ladder. I'd found success in my career. I had dated all sorts of women, every flavor in the rainbow, you name it. It's hard to name a woman I didn't date from it. Found success by the manly macho standard of notch posts and women. And one night God spoke to me and he said, have you had your fill yet? Has it been enough? Has it filled that hole in your heart? Have you found peace yet? And so that night I put off a prayer that I had been putting off for 10 years because I knew how hard things were going to get once I committed to this prayer, once I said this prayer. But I also knew, God showed me, he said, this life you've been living, you've kept bending your convictions more and more and hopping over that fence more and more. And he told me, he said, you're reaching a point, you're at that line where if you keep going any further with this path you're on and this life you're in, it's going to be that much harder and that much more painful for you to come back to our relationship and what I have for you. And so that night, shaking and terrified and crying, I said, okay, God, I surrender my will and my life back to you. It is yours. It is time for me to live for your purpose and your calling for my life. I have tried it my way. I have gone and tasted of all the world had to offer, and it brought me nothing. It's okay, Lord. I'm terrified and I'm scared, but I rededicate to our relationship and the life you have called me to. And within 6 weeks of me saying that prayer, I got laid off from the big fancy job. My big fancy truck was stolen by men claiming to be the police, and I had no recourse for getting it back. And I found out that my storage unit back in California that had my entire life in it, there had been an error with my overseas bank where they hadn't sent my payment through. And because I had been traveling other countries, I hadn't received the email saying that the storage unit was going to, the storage place was going to sell off my storage unit. And by the time I was able to get in touch with them, they had sold off my entire material life for owing them less than $250. I was less than $300 in debt to them, and they sold off everything I ever owned. My entire childhood, my entire military career, all my sacred cultural items, my eagle feathers, my bear shield, my moccasins, my dad's moccasins, my dog tags, my medals, my ribbons, my uniforms, my trinkets and treasures, my autographed Michael Jordan card, my autographed Joe Montana card, all my collectible cards. I used to collect sports cards. All my collectible cards, all my clothes, all my shoes, all my fitteds, all my leather jackets. I had shoes, I had jeans, I had shirts I hadn't even worn yet. A huge box of Blu-rays and DVDs. I had over 50 grand worth of stuff in that storage unit. And like that, it was all gone. Big fancy job, gone. Big fancy truck, gone. All of my material possessions that had given me validation as a man in this world, gone. And now I am in a foreign country with nothing to go back to and no idea what to do next. I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to stay out here for a year. I had some savings, so I'm going to stay out here for a year. And if I don't have a new contract within a year, I'll see it as you don't want me over here anymore. And see, the whole reason I'd gone overseas was to build up the funding to build my own MMA gym / wellness center without having to take out a loan. I thought if I went, built up a bunch of capital overseas, I could come back to the States and build my gym without having to take out a loan from any bank. And so I had this talk with God and said, okay, Lord, I'm going to stay out here for a year trying to find another contract. And if I don't get another contract, which I should, it shouldn't be that hard, then I'll take it that you don't want me here. So a full year goes by and I don't get another contract. Then on the day, I said if I don't have something by January of next year, I will leave. That was the deal, because it was in January when I said all this. So it gets to be the end of January and I still haven't gotten a contract. I'd had a couple things start and then fall through. I got a job with Lockheed Martin, and then a week before I was supposed to start, the position went away. And so last week of January, nothing's come. And I said, okay, Lord, I guess you don't have plans for me over here. You don't want me over here. So I bought a plane ticket back to the States. So my parents live in a tiny little tourist town in Nowheresville, Montana. I guess I'm gonna go stay with them while I figure it out. I'll buy the plane ticket, but my plane doesn't leave until February 6th. January 31st at 12 noon, I swear it, January 31st at 12 noon, I get an email offering me a new contract in Saudi Arabia. Even better than my old contract. And I said, praise God, praise God. Okay, Lord, you do still have plans for me over here. You are still going to bless me with my gym and what I'm trying to do. you had some things you wanted me to sit still with. Okay, like I see you. It was a test of my faith. Okay, like here we are. You waited till the last minute, but you providing, you gonna see me go over there. Okay, cool. I'll go sit with my parents for a month or two until this contract starts. So I go to Montana to visit my parents, and the contract keeps getting delayed. There's war in the region between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. There's missile blasts. They can't get our visa paperwork approved. The contract just keeps getting delayed. 1 month turns into 2 months, turns into 6 months. Meanwhile, they've had my passport this whole time, this recruiting agency, and every time I talk to them, they just say it's still in works. They're still working on it. The whole time I'm living on my parents' couch, and I would go to their church, and the people in their church would say, "Hey, I thought you were just visiting." And I'd say, "I thought I was too." And they'd say, "So what are you doing?" And I'd say, I don't know. I'm just here." And my mother had started up a hospice agency taking care of dying folks in their homes until they passed. And she had this pair of prominent clients that she couldn't trust to her other staff. And she asked me, she said, "Until your contract starts, would you come work for me and take care of this couple? I know I can trust them with you. I know that you'll take good care of them." I need to check this camera again. And so I said, okay, yeah, I wanted my mother's business to succeed, and so I would do anything I could to help her. And so my job was to go and take care of this 90-year-old white couple. Now see, growing up being a Native American kid on a reservation, being a poor Native American kid on a reservation, where we're constantly shown that we don't matter to the world and we don't matter to the government, and they want us dead, and the only thing they want us for is novelty and mascots. They want us for dream catchers and the myth and lore that they can use for mascots. Something cute that they can share at parties, that they're 1/16th Cherokee. And being mixed, hating my own skin, hating the fact that my mother was part white, and so that made me part white, and I looked white. Despite the fact that I was a whole Indian, I was a whole Native American. I had my Dakota name is Matosa Panaji, Black Bear Standing. I received that name in ceremony when I was 14 or 15. I danced in our powwows. I worked in our community. I participated in our events. I'm Native American. There's no part or half or percentage or quarter or 3/4 or 85% or 10% to it. I'm Native American, that's what I am, that's it. But I had this hatred of my own skin that I looked like a white boy. And I grew up knowing that the government lied, and the history books are written by conquerors. You have to do your own study and education. And so I had a chip on my shoulder, I had a chip on my shoulder against white people, especially rich white people. And when I'd gotten to Montana and sitting there, and my mother asked me to work for this family, God had told me, "I have plans for you as a leader, but you need lessons in servitude first." And I argued with him. I said, "What are you talking about? I've always served. I've been helping out my community my whole life, on and off the reservation. I've helped the less fortunate and the downtrodden. I've fed the homeless. I've embraced them. I've loved them. I've hugged on them. I've prayed with them. I've always helped. What are you talking about? And he said, yeah, but you've never had compassion for the people you felt were born with a leg up. You've never had compassion or grace for people you felt were born on third base. People who you felt were born into privilege. And he was absolutely right. And this 90-year-old white couple was my anti. To the fullest, they were my anti. Not only were they white people, they were white people from Texas. 90-year-old white people from Texas. Not only that, but they'd made their American money in oil. And just a few months earlier, I had been at the Standing Rock occupation fighting against the National Guard and private security that was attacking our indigenous women and children and men, trying to bulldoze and force a pipeline, an oil pipeline through their land. I was out there fighting that pipeline, out in the snow in the 20 below weather, trying to protect the women and children from the abuses that our government was doing to them at that time. Because I took up the call to fight terrorist threats, both foreign and domestic, and believe our government was abusing and terrorizing Native American people in this country 5 years ago. Most of you don't know about that. You didn't hear about them water hosing our women and children in below freezing temperatures out there in the North Dakota winter. So now I'm working for a family who made their money in oil. Their American money, they came from old German money. They lived in a $10 million home on 10 acres of land with a fireplace bigger than any bedroom I've ever had. Mind you, I've grown up with two God-loving, God-fearing, devoted parents, and we grew up poor. My dad having often, many years, having talks with me saying, son, there might not be anything under the tree for Christmas this year. We're going to do something. We'll have something, but don't get your hopes up. We can't do much. I used to hate Christmas. And so I had this anger of, why do good people suffer? My parents are such good, wonderful people. I have worked so hard to be a good, above and beyond, and live above and beyond. Why is it that I find myself jobless, living on my parents' couch, and serving these white people with all their money and affluence? And so every morning I would get up and I would pray and I would say, God, I don't have the strength to do it again today. I don't have the love. I don't have the grace. I don't have the mercy. I can't be nice to these people again today. I don't have it in me. And so I began to pray, Lord, renew in me today your love, your joy, your peace, your mercy, your grace, your strength, your patience, and your understanding. Help me to walk in your guidance. Day by day, I was able to take care of this family because I wanted my mother's business to be a success. So I was going to go to any length to make sure I represented her well. Now I am bathing this man. I'm wiping his ass. I'm helping him brush his teeth. I'm getting him dressed. I'm getting him out of bed. He can't get himself out of bed. I have to lift him out of bed. I have to use tools and winches and stuff to get him out of bed and into a chair. And I have to respect his dignity the entire time. So I have to do it with a smile on my face and a song on my lips. I have to love this man and show him care and show him respect and honor. Not only am I in charge of taking care of him for 12 hours a day, he and his wife, I'm also helping prepare their meals and do their laundry. I'm the houseboy. I'm the house slave. I'm wearing scrubs. And when their family would come over for meals, I would serve their family meals. And I've got the enemy in my ear going, look at you. Look at you. You are never going to be able to get past your fate. This was always going to be your fate, to serve white people. You was always going to end up being a poor Indian serving white people. That was always going to be the best. You couldn't escape your fate. Look at you now. Look at you. You're here with your piercings and your tattoos. Look at how their family looks at you. They probably think you're stupid. They probably think you have an alcohol problem. They probably think you're lazy and that this is the best job you could get. Yep, just another statistic. Just another lazy, dirty Indian. That was so humiliating. So humbling. I remember one time this man's pastor came to visit him, and they were in the other room, and I heard him say to his pastor, "You hear about Indians being lazy, but this one works so hard." Such a backhanded compliment. I remember another time where his son came to visit. His son is in his 50s, and all the grandkids are there. And I have a moment of rest in between my duties, and I'm sitting there reading a book. The grandkids are out somewhere on the 10 acres of land playing. And this 50-year-old man comes in and goes, "Hey, bud, you see where my pack of wild Indians got off to?" I looked him in his eye and I said, "I'm the only wild Indian here." Now see, that time, these folks don't know that the streets and everybody else know me as Savage. They only know me by my government name, my domestic name. They don't know that side of me. I have only ever shown these people a smile and peace and tact and grace and love. I have never been anything but kind and polite and peaceful towards this family. And this man still didn't get it. Probably because, once again, I'm white passing. They didn't see me as an Indian. They talk about, "Oh, your dad's Indian, huh? What's that like?" Well, how about you ask me? I'm an Indian too. And I said, "I'm the only wild Indian here." And he goes, "Ah," slapped me on my shoulder. He goes, "Ah, you're not so bad." I wanted to rip his throat out and show him who I was. I wanted to let him in on who Savage is. I said, "Again, I'm the only wild Indian here." At that point, it started to resonate to him what he was saying. He goes, "Oh, right, well, if you see where my bunch got off to, tell them I'm looking for them." Again, I was humiliated, I was embarrassed, I was insulted, I was offended, and I had to bite my tongue. And I'd learned very well how to bite my tongue because, growing up with my dad and all of his generational trauma and him not having a dad to raise him, my dad had a lot of pain in him and a lot of anger and a lot of violence. And being that I was the only mature boy in the house, I was the one who caught his anger and his violence. My baby brothers were just babies. My sister was a female. My mother was a female. So I caught his wrath in the physical. He gave me a black eye the day before my senior pictures because the house chores hadn't all been completed. The house chores weren't all my responsibility. My younger sister, I had assigned her a couple duties and she hadn't gotten her duties done. And so when my dad came home and saw that not everything was finished, he said, "What happened? I told you to make sure everything got done." I said, "She was supposed to do this." He said, "Yeah, but I told you to make sure it got done." And as I walked away, I said, "It's not my fault she's an idiot." And I heard him coming up behind me, and as I turned around, he blasted me in my eye. I was supposed to take my senior pictures the next day, and I had to reschedule. Instead, I went to work at McDonald's because I wasn't gonna slow down my money. Since I wasn't getting senior pictures, I went and volunteered for a shift, and I went and worked at McDonald's with my black eye. So see, my dad had a very short temper. My dad was very insecure, and at the slightest offense, he would feel insulted and go on the attack. He wouldn't just go on the defensive, he'd go on the offensive. And he would attack if he ever felt like his insecurities were being attacked. If he felt his intelligence or his manhood was being attacked, he'd go on the offensive. And he could be verbally, emotionally, mentally, physically abusive. And so I had to learn to choose my words very carefully and put a lot of time and thought into the things I wanted to say if I wanted them to be received without a lashing. That is part of where God has blessed me with skills in communication. I spend very much of my time in thought and thinking and choosing how to say things. Not just what to say, but how, what words to use. What is going to be the most articulate way that is going to convey a clear and a concise message with tact, if needed. Or with blunt force if I felt it needed. So I've grown up to be very analytical, very introspective in thinking. Why do I feel the way I do? Why do I want to react the way I do? Where do those feelings come from? Why does it make me sad? Where does that sadness come from? Why does it make me angry? Where does anger come from? And boy, did I have a lot of anger. And here's the thing. Anger is just an expression of pain. I wasn't aware that every time I was lashing out in anger, I was just displaying my pain. There's no such thing as anger without pain. You can try to say, "Oh no, I get angry without being hurt all the time." You're lying to yourself. You're lying to yourself if you think that. You're angry because something has harmed you in some way. If it has offended you or your family or your people or your country, that is something that hurts you. Anger is an expression of pain. And I was very good at showing my pain to the world, while also learning how to bite my tongue and controlling my anger. Like the Hulk said, I'm always angry, but I'm controlled. I was always angry. But because of the dad I was raised with, I learned how to bite my tongue and control my anger. I didn't lash out in the moment. I would be thinking. You did something to me, and I would think about it. I would find you later. If there was a man who I had a problem with, and we didn't have to fight right in that moment, I would save it, and I would find him later where I wasn't going to get in trouble, where I wasn't going to get caught up, where nobody else was going to be put in danger. I got the nickname Savage because I was always fighting, and my friends joked, "You know, it's because of Indians like you that white people call us savages." Because I was looking for an excuse, because when I was not inside my dad's house, once I was outside my dad's house, I wasn't going to let anybody disrespect me. He did all the disrespecting, and I bit my tongue with him, but I would be damned if I was going to let anybody else disrespect me. And so I used to fight a lot. I used to look for a reason. I got into MMA as a way to fight without the repercussions of jail. So here I am, taking care of this 90-year-old white couple in their house, looking at all their affluence, all their money, all their comfortability, looking at all the pictures on the walls of all the different countries and vacations they've gotten to enjoy. But I witnessed things within the house that showed me that despite all their money and wealth, they really did have problems like the rest of us. They really did have dysfunction in their family like the rest of us. They really did live with pain and regret and brokenness like the rest of us. And I began to have sympathy for them and empathy. And I really did grow to love them. And I was there with them as each of them passed. I was there holding the husband's hand when he took his final breath. And when he passed, I shaved the scruff off his face. I took the old soiled clothes off of him. I bathed his body with a sponge and cleaned him up. And I put fresh, distinguished clothes on him before presenting to him, to his family, to say their goodbyes, before the morgue came to collect the body. I did love them. I did grow to love them. Despite their old bigotry, they were good people. They just had a lot of ignorance. Ignorance in and of itself is not a negative thing or a bad thing. Ignorance, there's two types of ignorance. Ignorance by circumstance and ignorance by choice. To my understanding, they were ignorant by circumstance. They'd never been amongst other people. They'd never been amongst the have-nots. They'd never been amongst other cultures in a way where people were honest with them. So they were ignorant by circumstance. No one had educated them. I can't fault them for that. Now, there are people in this world who are ignorant by choice. You can talk till you're blue in the face, and they're going to put their head in the sand and bury down and say, nope, don't want to hear it. I've made up my mind. I don't care what's true. I don't care what is. I don't care what you have to say. I'm going to live and die on this hill. You can't speak to those folks. You're wasting your breath. Those folks who are ignorant by choice, you're going to have to let God sort them out. So for 2.5 years, I lived on my parents' couch, serving these white people in their home. And then at the end of the day, after taking care of them in their huge mansion, I would go back to the tiny little falling apart home that my parents were renting. My parents don't own a house, they still rent. And they still get by check to check all these years later. And watching my parents struggle to make ends meet after leaving that house of wealth every day and coming back to sleep on their couch every day for 2.5 years. Having the enemy in my ear going, look at you. Here you are in your 30s living on your parents' couch. You're a fuck up like everybody who didn't get out. Everybody who fell into alcoholism and drug addiction and abuse. Look at you. That's what's going to happen to you too. It's going to happen. It's just going to take you a little longer. But look at you here, right where you're supposed to be, living on your parents' couch in your 30s. This is your future. You're not getting out of here. And that was hard. There were so many days, so many nights where I cried on my face, snot pouring out of my nose, big, ugly crying face, crying on my face, saying, God, why does it have to be so hard? Why does serving you and walking this path you've put me on have to be so hard? I've always proclaimed you. I've never denied you. I've always kept you as my North Star. I've always told people about you who asked. I've always prayed to you. Why does this have to be so hard? You're not making a great advertisement to non-believers right now. And he told me, he said, hey, you asked for this. He told me, he said, you can tap out at any time and go back to doing life your way. If you really think that's going to do something different. But you've been there, you've tasted of all of it. So, you can either surrender that I am your God and I love you and I'm going to see you through this, and all things will be used to your good and to my glory. Or you can turn your back on me and you can go back to trying to do life your way. He said, but if you're going to do it my way, you got to start trusting and stop getting mad at me. Stop crying about it. Stop whining about it. You asked for this. I'll tell you what, I haven't stopped crying. There's days I still whine. Today is one of those days. So, I had thoughts that maybe I'm just supposed to take care of this couple until they pass, and once they pass, my mission work here is over, and God's going to bless me with my next adventure, and I'll finally get out of this nowhere little town where, like, when God has a plan, he knows what he's doing. Like, I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's no other people of color in this town. It's all just a bunch of yuppies and old white people with money, and white people without money. But there ain't no people of color in this town. The restaurants suck. There's nothing to do there. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's an hour from the nearest city. That city sucks. That city's got no diversity or culture or good food either. The winters are miserable. 6 feet of snow, 20 below. Just being honest. Just being honest with my feeling, where I was, what it was. So when they passed, I said, okay, God, what now? And I didn't get some miraculous instant answer that said, oh, okay, now you can go on with your life, and here's a new job, and here's your new path. Didn't happen like that. I actually continued to work for my mother, and I took care of someone else, another old white person, except this time, this white person didn't have any of the charm or affluence of that previous couple. Because I'll tell you, that couple, they were charming. That couple was charming. I loved their relationship. I loved the way he would still flirt with her at 90 years old in his wheelchair. The new gentleman I was taking care of did not have any of that charm. He suffered dementia from a stroke and had no short-term memory. So every day he would repeat the same stories to me like they were brand new. Share the same stories with me every day all over again. And he was not the charming man they were. He didn't have the affluence of the charming home they did. It's quite the opposite. He was quite hard to deal with. His family was hard to deal with. His family was harder to deal with than he was, I'll say that. So now I'm going, okay, maybe this is what I'm resigned to. Maybe I'm going to live the rest of my life in Nowheresville, Montana. And this is what it is. And so I'd pray and say, Lord, if this is your life for me, then help me be okay with it. Change my heart so that I can like this place, because I hate it here. But if this is where you want me, help me surrender to it and change my heart that I can learn to like it here. And so it was day by day a struggle. Lord, renew in me your love, your joy, your peace, your mercy, your grace, your strength, your patience, your understanding. Help me to walk in your guidance. It was a day-to-day thing. You don't stockpile God's blessing of peace. You have to come back for it daily. He teaches us that in the Bible. You can't stockpile His blessings and say, oh, I'm good for a while, God. I'll holler at you in a couple of weeks when I need a re-up. So I took care of this man for months, and then one day something changed. A whole series of coincidences all fell into place on the same day. And a lot of my life, people are going to say, oh, this is coincidence, this is a coincidence, this is coincidence. At what point do you stop arguing coincidence when there's so many coincidences all culminating in something? So this one day in particular, there were so many coincidences. You know, there's no such thing as coincidence in the Hebrew language. I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe there's any such thing as coincidence. So on this day, I happened to sit through this, just skipping ahead, I sat through this 3-hour online live webinar that I had signed up for. And by the end of this webinar, the hosts, I was listening with chills, and I just felt like electricity surging through my body. And they were talking about being a nutrition and life coach. And they talked about what kind of background makes a good life coach. What kind of background makes a good leader? What kind of background makes a good servant, a good person who serves the people? And the more they talked, the more it just resonated with me, and I just felt this surging of power and electricity all through me, and it just felt so right. And I said, God, if this is of you, then don't let the enemy diminish it. Don't let the enemy get in my ear and talk me out of it and say that this is just my own feelings and this is just my own desires. And when I said that prayer, I was immediately overwhelmed with a peace and a joy. And I just fell on my face crying tears of joy. And I knew God had placed it on my life that this is your next path. This is what you're doing next. And He showed me. I had saved up some money working for my mother at that point. I had saved up about 12 grand. Now, I've never shared how much money I'd saved up until now in this moment for this video, because to speak on it any sooner would have been to try to bring a reward into my life from it. This is just me trying to be honest with the extent of me trying to walk in faith and fear. So when I felt Him saying it was of me, He told me, because I thought, okay, I can pay the monthly tuition for this institute, because it involved enrolling in this federally accredited institution. And so I thought, okay, I could pay monthly for this institution. And I still got enough money. I can go set up shop in whatever city I want and start building this new life. And God told me, pay the tuition in full. The tuition was $5,000 for this program. He said, pay the tuition in full. I said, okay, cool. That still leaves me with about $7,000. Like, I can go, like, I got friends all over the country. I can go rent a room in somebody's place, and you know, I could live off $7,000 for a year while I build up this business. But He said, after you've paid the tuition, take whatever is left and go into your parents' church on Sunday and give it as a faith offering to their pastor. Now, see, I didn't regularly attend my parents' church. One, it was kind of stuffy, kind of quiet, wasn't my crowd, wasn't my scene. And I was dealing with a lot of shame and humiliation, and I didn't want to talk to these people about So you're still here. What are you doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to talk about it. So I didn't go to their church. But this was the instruction God had given me. And so because I was surrendered to His will and trusting that He is God, and He had told me, if I am your God and you believe I am the supernatural God I say I am and show I am, then stand on it, walk on it, live like I am a supernatural God. So I paid the tuition in full that day. I went to the bank and I withdrew everything else. And they said, why are you withdrawing it? I said, because I asked for it. That's why. It ain't your business. Give me money. I took all of the money, put it in an envelope, went to my parents' church on that Sunday, and I handed the envelope to their pastor. I didn't tell him how much was in it. I didn't boast to the church about how much was in it. I didn't tell my parents and family how much was in it. I'm not telling anyone how much was in it until right now. So then I'm going, okay, God, now what? And I had opportunities in Wisconsin. I had opportunities in West Virginia, had opportunities in Arizona and Texas and Washington and California. And I said, okay, God, I've been sitting still for 2.5 years on this couch. I don't want to screw up and go to the wrong place now. Where am I supposed to go? And so I was praying about each of these places, and God gave me a piece about Arizona. And I went and stayed with an old military friends out there for a period of months, trying to build a business, and it didn't work out. And I went and I stayed with another friend, because the friends I was with, it was at the height of COVID, and it wasn't working out. There was just a lot of issues, and there was a lot of fear of COVID, and the fact that I'm out in the streets trying to promote a business, and I'm in the gym every day trying to promote a business, didn't bode well with them trying to keep their family safe from COVID and me potentially bringing it in. So they asked, after 3 months, they asked me to leave. And I said, okay, no problem. And I had been preaching how I'm walking in faith and following God. And God showed me, hey, you're supposed to show your faith that I am your God. And so when they said it's not working out, you said that it wouldn't be hard for you to find somewhere else to go if it wasn't working out. I said, okay, yeah, no problem. Just give me a week if you can, and I'll find an Airbnb or something. And no love lost. I love you. You're my family forever. I can never repay you for the fact that you brought me into your home with your children. Savage with his tattoos, and his character, and his piercings. And you trusted me with your children. I can never repay you or thank you enough for that. So there's no love lost on my end. I love you guys. I love you guys. But God said, show them your walk in faith. And so after we had this discussion, I went to my bedroom, I packed up my belongings, and I was out of there an hour later. That was 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. I packed up all my belongings into this little beater of a car that my parents had lent to me to get to Arizona. Now mind you, all my belongings now fit in 2 suitcases. Now that I've lost everything in that storage unit, all my belongings, everything I own, fits in 2 large suitcases. I load them up into this old beater Subaru that's falling apart. The AC doesn't work in it properly. And I go sit in a Walmart parking lot, no idea where I'm sleeping that night or what the plans are. I called up someone else I knew in the area and asked if I could come stay on his couch for a little while I figured it out. I said okay, and I went and I stayed on that person's couch for a month. I'm going to be honest about that person, because that person has issues they need to confront and face and acknowledge and accept. Without going into too much detail, that person was not the person they had conveyed themselves to be. The person of integrity and honesty and justice and good living. They had been putting on a facade, and when I lived in their house, I learned that. And so I'd stayed with them for a month, and it was, I'm sharing a couch with this person's 2 dogs. An old, dirty, smelly couch. I'm sharing it with 2 small, dirty, smelly dogs. A long way from my big fancy career in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, my big fancy military career. Living out of my suitcases. And I had a friend of mine in Las Vegas. Let me check the camera again. I had a friend of mine in Las Vegas, my best friend, my brother, my blood from out the mud. I was on the phone with him one night, and he said, man, why don't you just come to Vegas? You know people out here. There's great opportunity for the business you're trying to build out here. You know, you and I can get a place together. You know, you can save money on rent. I can float you while we get this business going. You know, I can help you out with it. You know, you won't be alone. You'll have me. And I thought, man, that sounds amazing. That all sounds wonderful. That sounds great. That sounds like just perfection. I said, but if this is where God wants me, then this is where I need to stay. I can't leave just because times got hard and things got tough and things got painful and uncomfortable. If this is where I'm supposed to be, then this is where I need to stay. I said, so I'm going to pray about it and I'll get back to you. And he said, man, how you know God didn't tell me to tell you this? I've had a lot of people say that throughout my life. And I said, he might have. So I'm going to pray about it and I'll get back to you. So that night I prayed about it and I said, Lord, Vegas sounds like a real great opportunity. You know, sounds like it really ease my burdens, ease my load, ease my pains, struggles, and sorrows. But if that's not what you have for me, then I don't want to go. If this is where you want me, then I need to stay here, and I need you to show me, and I need you to make it clear, because I don't trust to hear you over my own flesh right now, because that sounds amazing to my flesh. So I need you to make it very clear if I am supposed to stay or if I am to go. The next evening, Friday evening at 8 p.m., less than 24 hours later, the person who I am staying with comes home and flips out on me and starts screaming at me and says, I don't want you here anymore. I'm sick of feeling judged by you. I'm sick of you looking down on how I live my life. Mind you, I hadn't done those things. This person felt judged because I lived my life in a different way. I didn't judge him for how he lived his life. I knew his life. I'd been there, I'd done it. I had no judgment against it. I just lived differently. And he started freaking out, screaming at me, I want you out. I want you out tonight. Started throwing things. I said, okay, I'll leave, but I lost my debit card this week and I need the money you owe me. He owed me he owed me, he owes me $150. I said, you just give me the money you owe me and I'll split. I'm not giving you anything. I want you out tonight. This is my dad's house and he doesn't want you here. I said, I think we should talk to your dad. I think he should know what's going on. I think he should know how you're behaving. I'm very curious to know what it is you've been telling your dad about me. No, he doesn't want to speak to you. He doesn't need to speak to you. You just need to get out of our house. I said, you give me the $150 and I'll go. He calls the police and tells them that I am holding him ransom. And that I have a gun. I do own a gun. My gun had never come out of my luggage. It had never come out of my suitcase while I was there. Didn't even have any bullets. I didn't even own any bullets for it. But I went and waited outside for the police to show up. They showed up, and I packed my belongings under a police escort back into the Subaru. My 2 suitcases. Mind you, again, like I said, I had lost my debit card that week. So I have $40 in cash on me, and I've got a jar of change. I have no way of getting any other money that night. It's 8 p.m. on a Friday night. I've got nowhere to go, nobody to turn to. All my belongings are in the car. I've got $40 in cash and a jar of change. I go to Walmart and cash out the jar of change. There's $45. I spent $5 to buy a cooler and a bag of styrofoam cooler and a bag of ice to take the groceries with me from the previous place, because I'd spent a lot of money at Sprouts on organic wild caught salmon and grass-fed beef and farm raised petted loved chicken, and I wasn't wasting any of that meat, and so I put it all in a styrofoam cooler with a bag of ice and my $80 in cash, and I got on the road headed for Las Vegas that night. I was in Vegas by 2 a.m. I called up an ex-girlfriend who lived out here in Las Vegas and asked if I could come and stay on her couch. I knew that she worked the graveyard shift and that she worked most nights and that she would be up. And so I called her an hour or two before I got into town. She said, yeah, you can come stay with me. So I went and stayed at her place. But I let her know, I said, I'm on this new path with God. I'm on this new journey. Our old relationship, this ain't that. There's not going to be a physical relationship. We're not having sex. I'm abstinent. I don't want to blur the lines or confuse this. And she was on board with that. I won't talk too much more on that relationship out of respect for her privacy. But, so I get there that weekend, and I call up my boy, my best friend, my brother from another, and I said, I'm here, man. Let's get this place. What's good? And he says, man, I've been thinking about it. You know that library that I'm helping build in Africa? I said, yeah. He goes, man, I think I'm going to move back out there. He said, I'm going to move out there. So I don't think I'm sticking around here. I'm going to move to Africa to go help build that library and live out there for a while. And I was angry for a moment. I was like, man, are you kidding me? You just told me to drive to Vegas. You just told me to move out here that we could get a place together. I don't have credit. I don't have money saved up. I don't have employment history. I don't have a way of getting an apartment of my own. But then God reminded me, hey, I brought you out here, not him. You were brought out here for my purpose, not his. Don't be mad at him. You're where you're supposed to be. I said, okay, Lord. And I lived on my ex-girlfriend's small, lumpy couch for 6 months. I didn't enjoy it. It was miserable. I wanted to go and work and get a job and get my own place so bad. But God said, no, be still, be patient. I was day trading cryptocurrency, and I was betting on UFC fights, and I was getting that Trump check, that stimulus check. And between those things, I was making enough money to where I wasn't putting a burden on the friend I was staying with. I was paying my share of the utilities and the groceries and the expenses in the apartment. So I wasn't living off of her. I was just sleeping on her couch. But it was so humiliating. I went through a lot of humiliation and harassment and embarrassment and ridicule and slander while I was there from people. And it was so hard. It hurt my pride and my ego so much. And the enemy was constantly in my ear, calling me a loser, calling me lazy, calling me a fool. And when the time was right, God said, okay, now. I had actually convinced that person they needed to get on with their own life and move away from their situation in Nevada. They had an opportunity they needed to take somewhere else, and I told them I would help them do all they needed to make that opportunity happen. But in the process, I'm talking myself out of a place to live. I'm not seeking a job. I haven't saved up money. I have no idea where I'm going once this person moves away. I'm helping this person pack up their apartment and the deadline is getting closer and closer. I have no idea where I'm going to go. We get to the final week and I still have no idea. And then an old military friend hits me up and says, hey, I just got this job working for this insurance company. It's a job working from home. Great pay, great benefits. I could put a referral in for you if you'd like. And I thought, well, next week I'm homeless and unemployed. Like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, I probably should now. I felt led to say yes. So I said, yeah, please refer me. So I helped this person I'm staying with pack up and move to another state. I take my 2 suitcases of belongings, I put them in the Subaru, I store the car at McCarran Airport because I think it'll be safe there for a couple days. Finish packing up this person's U-Haul, and we hit the road. The plan is that I'm going to help her get to where she's going. She's bought me a plane ticket to get back to Las Vegas, and then I'm on my way. So we get to this other state. The person drops me off at my motel. I've got a flight out of there in the morning back to Las Vegas. No idea what comes once I get to Vegas. I've got like $700 to my name. No, I had more. I had more in savings. I was doing the crypto trading. There was money in my crypto account. But it wasn't much, and it was the money that was making money, so I couldn't spend it because I needed it to make the money. So, anyway, the company that this friend had referred me for, I actually had an interview with them the day I'm supposed to catch my flight back to Las Vegas. And I've only got enough money on me to Uber from my motel room to the airport to catch the flight back to Las Vegas. But this interview I've got to take is after I have to check out of my motel room because it was different time zones. I thought I was going to be able to take the interview from my motel room. Didn't work out. I Ubered halfway to the airport and had the Uber drop me off in a park. And I took my first interview with this company sitting underneath a tree in this park with nowhere to live and no idea where I'm going once I get back to Vegas. The interview goes well. They say they'll be in touch within the next 2 weeks for the follow-up interviews. So, get on my flight, fly back to Vegas that night, no idea where I'm going, pick up my car, get on Groupon and book a week at the Stratosphere Hotel at a Groupon rate for the weeknights. So I go stay at the Stratosphere Hotel. All my belongings in the car, staying in the Stratosphere, no extra money to play with or spend or do anything, and I'm going, okay, I have no idea what happens next. My best man's out here, and the week's going by. I'm playing it day to day, going, okay, Lord, what's going on? Day to day. Slowly, my week is expiring. It's getting to be the weekend. The room is going to triple in price come the weekend. I can't afford to stay there for the weekend. Trying to figure out what to do. My friend says, hey man, why don't you fly back to your parents' place while you wait for the rest of these interviews, and once you get the job you can come back. You can go store your base on your car on the Air Force base. I said that's a good idea. So that day I bought a plane ticket back to Montana where my parents were staying, and we stored my car on the base. I flew to Montana, and now here I am a year later from venturing out, back on my parents' couch. Not sure if I've got this new job or not. And my mother says, hey, would you work for me while you're here? I have somebody I could use your help with. Now I'm back to serving white people in their homes. And how I'm going, oh, now the enemy's in my ear going, see, you thought you were leaving. You thought you was getting away. You thought you had a future. You thought your plans were bigger. God had something out there for you. And so I'm going through all that insecurity and anxiety and fear and doubt again. I stay out there for a month. I interview 2 more times for the job. I get the job. I get told on July 25th, yep, you'll be starting on, no, I think it was closer to the 29th. Yeah, I got told on July 29th, you'll be starting next week on August 6th in Las Vegas. Be ready. We're going to be mailing you a computer and all the equipment. I gave them an address of a friend who was living in Las Vegas for them to mail all the computer equipment to. And then I got online and went on Airbnb. I found a place to stay in Las Vegas, or in Henderson, rather, next to Las Vegas. I paid extra for them to install hardwired internet in the room so I could work from the Airbnb while I got set up, not knowing how long I was going to be there. But I paid for a month. I fly back to Vegas, move into this Airbnb. The Airbnb was enough. It had a desk, it had high-speed internet, it had a clean bed, it had a humidifier, it had a comfortable chair, it had I can't talk real well of it otherwise, but it had those things, and those things were what I needed. So I worked from the Airbnb for my first 6 weeks till I had enough money saved up working for the company that I could get an apartment. So I got licensed as a health insurance agent. I am currently licensed in 23 states. And I'm constantly getting emails from companies offering me new jobs, work from home jobs, good paying jobs, $20+ an hour plus full benefits, working from home. All I got to do is say yes. So anyway, I get hired with this company. I get into an apartment. I start to I still haven't gotten my feet under me. I'm paying to get set up, building a life, sleeping on an air mattress. I buy a mountain bike to get me around because gas is expensive. So I worked for this company for 8 months, and I'm a standout. My coworkers love me. My bosses love me. I'm helping my coworkers. I'm teaching them and training them. I've had people reach out to me and tell me how much I inspire their day and how they look forward to my morning greetings and how me being present there just makes it a better day. And so I'm striving. I'm walking in faith with God, going, all right, God, I've had faith. You've seen me through it day by day. I was scared. I was terrified. I was insecure, I had doubts, but you have seen me through it every step of the way. Here we are, it's finally coming together. Watch, I'm going to be blessed soon, like I'm going to be able to pursue my health coaching, my life coaching. It's all coming together. Eight months in, April 4th, it's a Monday, I get off a sales call and get asked to join this Zoom meeting. Join the Zoom meeting, and they say, if you're in this meeting, we regret to inform you that the company is downsizing and your employment is terminated effective immediately. Monday morning, back in April. Now, I had just signed a lease on this apartment. in January. So here I am. I've just signed a lease for a year on this place in January. Here it is 3 months in, and I just got laid off from this new great job I've got. And boy, was it good money. It was on track to be another 6-figure income. I was on track to being back in 6 figures again. And it's funny, the night before I got laid off, God spoke to me. And he said, hey, remember that the greatest moments of growth in your life have come when control was taken out of your hands and you went into the unknown. That's where your greatest moments of growth have come from. So the next time that happens, don't be afraid, be excited. And I thought, okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, growth is never comfortable, you're right. The very next day I get laid off from the company. And I go, oh, that's what you were talking to me about last night. Now it makes sense. That's what last night was about. So I had a peace about it. I was angry because I felt I had been wronged. I felt that what they had done I felt it lacked integrity. I felt it wasn't just. And being a person who was very about justice and what is just and right, I was very offended. And I was angry, but I wasn't afraid. I said, okay, Lord. And I continued to pray about it, like, what now? And I felt him telling me that if he wanted me in just any job, he would have left me in that one. And that he had plans for me and he had work for me to do. But this was a time when he just wanted me to rest in him and rely on him and just do the work he would give me. Because another thing I had argued with God in my life about is I would say, like, Lord, you've been with me. You were with me through everything, but I had to make those hard choices. I had to sacrifice. I had to struggle. I had to go through all that pain all those years. I had to make those hard choices and take the road less traveled and go through the ostracization and the humiliation and the mocking and the insults and the doubts and the people making assumptions about me and doubting me and thinking less of me. I had to go through all that. You were with me, but I made those choices that made me successful. And he said, oh, you think you did all that? You think those choices were through your own guidance and your own understanding and your own smarts and wisdom, huh? He said, I want you to be still and do nothing and watch me provide for you. I want you to be still and have faith that I am your God and watch me work so that you can't take credit for any of it. I said, okay, Lord. So I got laid off from that company in April. And I haven't started seeking other employment since. I felt him telling me that I was just do the work he gives me and continue working on building my business. That he had blessed me with my business and he was going to bless it, and it is my path. So I have continued to pursue building Try Better Health and pursue this path as a life coach, despite the fact that I have not had any income since April. And since April, I have been slowly exhausting my savings to keep the rent paid, and keep groceries and supplements and bike tires. And so I've had peace through all of it most days. Occasionally, it gets to be close to the first of the month and I'm going, okay, Lord, rent's about to be due. I've got enough to pay it, but I have no idea how I'm going to feed myself next week. And he's told me recently, just keep showing up. Show up for the work I give you. Show up at your church. Show up in your community. Show up at the gym for your workouts. and show up for the people that I bring into your life. Show up for the ministry I've given you. So I said, okay. And it's hard. It's not easy. But day by day, I return to him and I say, renew in me today your love, your joy, your peace, your mercy, your grace, your strength, your patience, and your wisdom. Help me to walk in your guidance. And so I'll say, since April, God has done a whole lot in my life. He has been changing me. He has been growing me. He has been introducing me to people. I've become an active member of my church. An active and respected member of my church. And I show up for the gym. I show up for my workouts. I show up for the people God places in my path. He has created me and called me to serve. He has created and called all of us to serve Him, His will, His purpose. But He has created me to be a servant to others. My job is to serve other people. That's what a life coach is. My job is to serve other people and help them live better, more fulfilling lives. My job is to serve people. And so, I've been pursuing the business, been trying to constantly put out content, create content, be in the gym, prove I'm about the things I say, not trying to put on or pretend I'm something I'm not pretending that I have any sort of wealth or luxury in my life, trying to be real honest about everything. And just doing the work He's given me. And He has blessed me so far. Yes, I have slowly exhausted the savings I had. I've had to cash out my 401k. I've had to sell off my investments. But every month since April, my rent has gotten paid. I am at a point now where I have exhausted my savings. I've sold everything I could. And now I have had to borrow money from my family for the first time in my life. I've never been the person to borrow money. I've been the person lending money. I'll tell you what, there might be some folks seeing this who owe me money. If everybody who owed me money paid me back, my rent would get paid next month. So, it has been hard. It has not been easy. But I have continued to show people love and grace and mercy. I've continued to have joy and peace and strength. And God has continued to bless me with patience and understanding day by day. And so, we come to me going to jail a couple weeks ago. Thursday before last, I had been praying that morning for God to give me guidance. I felt especially inclined to pray for guidance that day. I said, Lord, lead me where you want me today. Help me to hear you. Help me to obey and go where it is you have me. I felt like the plans could differ and be outside my normal day-to-day routine. And so I prayed about that. I was also praying, or I'd been reading in 2 Timothy, which was Paul's last letter from prison before he was executed. And so I prayed that day, Lord, help me to, be available to plans changing and going where you want me. So I'd gone and done my workout and stuff that day and gone home, and I'm getting ready for church that night. And I'm going to be heading across town. And 5 minutes before I'm going to leave, one of our pastors calls me and says, "Hey, Sav, could you do me a favor?" He said, you left for church yet? I said, no, not yet. I was about to leave. He said, oh, could you head to the other church instead? The other church is right around the corner from me. He said, would you head over there instead? The ladies are holding Bible study, and the person who was supposed to watch the kids can't make it. We need somebody who can watch the kids and babysit while the ladies have Bible study. Could you do that for me? I said, yeah, absolutely, Pastor. I'm there. So, I'm getting ready to hop on my bike and head around the corner. Now, my bicycle has a light for after it gets dark, because Nevada has a law that it has to have a light on it. That's something I learned after being put in handcuffs because of not having a light 2 months ago. So I bought a light, but because I hadn't been planning on riding my bicycle that night, the light wasn't charged up. But they needed me at the church. So I'm getting ready to head out the door. And I live in a dangerous neighborhood. Somebody was shot at the building next door 3 weeks ago. And there's been a lot of violence and crime on the street I travel to that church. And so as I was heading out the door, I felt inclined, you need to take your gun with you. So I grabbed my gun real quick. But I was going to be taking care of children, and it's an open carry state, so I am allowed to open carry. It's my gun, it's registered to me. I'm allowed to open carry, have it showing. But I didn't want the kids seeing it and getting curious and looking for it. So I put it in my bag. Went to the church, I locked my bag up in the office where the kids couldn't get to it. Babysat the kids for an hour, church service ended, helped the ladies take some pictures, said goodbye to the kids, got on my bicycle to head back home. Like I said, I live less than a block away. You can see my apartment building from the church. I hop on my bicycle to head back home, and police pulled me over because the light is out on the front of my bike again. Pulled me over on the sidewalk. I stop because I know why they're stopping me. They don't say anything to me. They don't question me. They immediately, as soon as they pull up, they tell me, step to the front of the car, put your hands on the hood. They did the same thing the first time. I'm posing no threat. I'm not doing anything. I'm just a guy on his bicycle on the sidewalk. Immediately tell me, step to the front of the vehicle, place your hands on the hood. So I do. I take my bag off. I set my bag on the hood. Tell me to put my hands behind my back, and they immediately put me in handcuffs. One of the officers reaches for my bag, and I tell him, sir, you do not have permission to search my bag. I learned my rights after the first time they pulled me over the month prior. I said, sir, you don't have permission to search my bag. He said, I'm just going to move it out of the way some. He grabbed the top of my bag and he slid it up, and then he began looking through it. I said, what are you doing? He pulled my gun. He found my gun. Allegedly he could not see my gun from where it was with the bag. He said, I had probable cause because I felt what I thought was a gun handle through the bag. I don't believe that to be true because he grabbed... That's neither here nor there at this point. They found the gun. They charged me with concealing without a permit. Now, I have taken the class for the concealed carry. I just haven't been able to afford the permit. But I'm completely in my right to own my gun, to have my gun. But my gun wasn't as visible as it needed to be, and so they charged me with concealing without a permit, which is a felony. So as it stands, I have been charged with a felony, and I spent that Thursday and Friday night in jail. I have court on September 26th regarding this case. I was supposed to be riding to meet with a lawyer today who is a friend of one of my pastors. I was supposed to be meeting with a lawyer today to see about taking my case, to see if the lawyer can get the case dismissed. riding to the lawyer's office today, I'm going through a crosswalk, and my tire randomly bends. The frame, my wheel frame, randomly bends as I'm going through a crosswalk heading to the appointment with the lawyer today. The lawyer's office is a 25-minute bike ride from my place. I'm nearly 20 minutes into this ride when my bike stops working. The wheel frame just completely bends. So now I can't make the appointment with the lawyer. I've got to reschedule. My bike tire is screwed up. I can't just replace the tubing. It's not a tube issue. The whole frame is bent. I need a whole new wheel. I have no money. I just paid my rent. I just paid my cell phone bill. My electric bill is overdue. I'm out of money. I've exhausted it all. I've had to borrow money from my parents and from my baby brothers. It's a humiliating thing. I've never borrowed money from anyone. I've been working since I was 10 years old. And now my transportation, my bicycle, doesn't work. And I've had to borrow money again to get my bike fixed. My mother is going to be sending me money to get my bike fixed. I hate that. My parents don't have money to be lending me or giving me. But I felt that this is what God called of me. And if I was supposed to be in some other job, He would have kept me in that one. And I pray about it daily, like, Lord, am I supposed to go out and find another job? I don't like this. I don't like that I'm borrowing money from my family now. And again, I just haven't felt Him telling me, go get a job yet. I've just continued to feel a peace that I'm supposed to remain still and just trust that He's going to provide. I haven't collected any unemployment. I get $300 a month from the military. And so the wind and waves are looking quite high and heavy right now. And I'm trying to walk in faith. And I don't know at this point if I'm supposed to continue pursuing this business or if I'm supposed to let it go and go get a 9-to-5. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I go from here. But I needed to put out this video. I needed to let you know what I am. Not just what I know, but who I am. My history. I went to a 4-day Christian men's retreat over the weekend that a church friend had thought they wanted to sponsor me. They thought I would be a good person to grow from this event, and they sponsored me to go. So I said, yeah. I prayed about it. I said, yeah, I'll go. And while I was there, I found out this sponsor had been in touch with friends and family of mine. Been reaching out to them, and on that 4th day I received a bunch of letters from people. This is more, in all those years where I was seeking love and validation from the world, I never received this kind of outpouring of support. I'm going to read with you a couple of these things. This one's from my oldest sister. Hi, brother. So we're supposed to send you an encouraging word, eh? Keep on keeping on. Or, you can't have no in your heart. No is not an option, brother. Joe Dirt. I kid. I just want to tell you that I am so very proud of you. I applaud that you don't let fear hold you down. That you can and will travel to places unknown on your own. That you will move to new cities or countries alone and build a wonderful community around you, always trying to learn and improve while also looking out for others. Never afraid to do the hard work instead of choosing the easiest instant gratification. More than all that, though, I admire your ability to confront. To stand up to a person or system that attempts to hold you or others down. As a trauma survivor many times over, it is a learned behavior to just be nice and never talk back. I struggle daily to unlearn this behavior. So in this way, I hope to be as strong as you. Keep on working hard and keep on inspiring. I love you, your big sister. This one from my pops. Hi, son. I hope this card isn't too feminine for you. I just want to tell you that from the time you were conceived, our prayers have always been for God to imprint upon your heart the importance of putting Him first in your life. He has blessed you with a heart to be there for others and to build, not tear down. We are so happy to see you building your trust in God and surrendering to His will, while crucifying yours. You carry the name Black Bear Standing. Traditionally, the black bear is medicine for healing. Your desire to be a life coach goes with your name. What better life can you help others build than one with our Savior? Keep your eyes on His prize, son. You will never lose. I love you and look forward to watching how Jesus uses you. This one from my youngest sister. Hey, big brother. I'm so proud of you. I don't say it enough, and I never really have. I do hope you know, though, that I've always been proud of you, and now more than ever. I'm so joyful and excited seeing you strive to be obedient and open in your relationship with Christ. I have loved seeing you open up and be willing to be vulnerable throughout your journey. As you've become gentle and vulnerable, letting more and more of your identity rest in God's hands, the more your words have been heard and echoed farther. Keep up the good work in being that example. I appreciate you so much for making time for the boys. Every birthday, phone call, and hug, You've shown up, and it means so much to all of us. You're setting a wonderful example for them of steadfastness and discipline. They adore their uncle and miss you. I love you, brother, and am so happy to see where Christ takes you next. Love, your little sister. And lastly, I'm going to read one from my mother. Son, some of my fondest memories are of holding you at night in the weeks after you were born. Those were precious, sacred moments. I would sing the Lionel Richie song, "You Are So Beautiful to Me," to you as I held you. I meant every word. As a young mom, I wondered what your future held. I prayed constantly as you grew that you would never know a day out of God's will. Two things I was always sure of. You would be a soldier who would fight for your people. And two, you would be a leader. Not only have I seen you go to fight for your country, I've also seen you fight for the helpless and the elderly. I've seen you fight through fear and depression and insecurity. Having done all to stand, I've seen you stand. Weary and tired, still you stand. I've also seen you bow in submission to God's will, fighting your own desires and dreams. I've seen you struggle to be a good leader and a good example to family and friends. Often unappreciated and misunderstood, you still try to lead with kindness and grace. It has been such a joy to watch you grow in your walk with God. Just like the Lionel Richie song says, "You're everything I hoped for, you're everything I dreamed, you are so beautiful to me." I love you, son. I can't wait to see what your future holds as you journey ever closer to Christ. I'm going to read one more from one of my pastors. To my brother Savage, my brother, my friend, it has been a pleasure to watch you grow in your faith and to see the call of God upon your life. God has given you the ability to connect with an array of people from young and old, from street to upper class. Furthermore, He has given you the desire to use that gift for His good pleasure, the preaching of the gospel. I've gotten to witness firsthand the lives that the Lord has used you to reach. And I trust that there will be many more in Jesus' name. I know this year, or maybe the last few years, have been filled with hardship and trials, as you know full and well. That God has promised us that if we are to enter the kingdom, we must face many. Acts 14:22, through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. So take comfort in this, that God is treating you like a son and if a son, then an heir to all of his precious promises. As it is also written, the end of a thing is greater than its beginning. The Lord Almighty has a design for those things to which he has called you, and we know that he who began a good work will be faithful to complete it. I say all these things that you might be encouraged and strengthened. These promises are not here today and gone tomorrow. They are yes and amen. They are forever and ever. As long as the word of God endures, so shall we, to whom these promises have been made. Furthermore, every promise of God has been purchased and sealed by the blood of Jesus. You are his, and the blood has made the promise unbreakable. For God will not take away from you what Christ's blood has paid for. And even more, the Holy Spirit has applied them to your heart. He is the deposit or down payment that what God has promised for your future, you can have assurance here and now. Furthermore, you have family in Christ. God has given you brothers and sisters, and mothers and fathers who are here to remind you of who you are in Christ, a beloved son. All of this is by grace. You and I did not deserve it. It was not because we worked for it or willed it bad enough. In fact, it was not even as though God somehow looked into the future and saw that you would believe. No, it has nothing to do with you or anything that God foresaw in you, but has everything to do with God and that good pleasure in which it pleased him to put you in Christ. You are in Christ because of him and him alone. He knew the plans that he has for you. Now let me ask you, who can take away your promise? Who can steal what God has reserved in heaven for you? What devil in hell can separate you from his love? None. So then, all these trials are somehow working for your good. We may not know how or why, but we do know that God's purpose will be established and nothing can sway his hand. Take courage, my brother. You are his. So, now you know who I am. My name is Savage and I am a life coach. It is my duty and my desire to serve people because I know their pain. I have felt it deeply and intimately. I know anxiety. I know insecurity. I know doubt and fear. I know loss. I know loneliness. I know pain. And despite the tears, despite the struggle I am in right now, I could go out and hop back in a six-figure job again anytime I like. I can go back to distracting myself with toys and women and comforts and luxuries and distractions. I am struggling in this season, in this place, in this time, in this purpose, because it is my desire and my calling to serve others and help them lead better lives. My name is Mato Sapanaji. I am Black Bear Standing. I am good medicine, and I am leadership.